Good morning from the tropics.
Oh, wonderful to see you. Take the time to check in, look in each other. So good to see you. Connecting. So as you settle in, just feeling that it's like the sweetness of the goodness of connecting together with this intention to call in more kindness, care, quiet abiding with this intention to understand rather than to judge our experience. Sometimes we might notice more future thoughts as we go through the day. And if you find that that gets a little bit more predominant or intense, sometimes it's really helpful to just remind ourselves that there is a strength of attention that can come back just to something maybe more, maybe less refined, like the bottom of our feet, hands, sounds, just might require that spirit of beginning again. It's a little more frequently. It's that sense of understanding. Of course, there'll be more pull to the future, but just that knowing that we can come back to the present. And maybe kind of tune into our bodies and notice if there's any deeper motivation that's happening there, like excitement or fear. There can be a kind of effervescent, bubbliness to either one of those. And it's helpful to really ground the attention with earth element, our bones, our feet, our hands. And to see if we can stay a while. So when, for example, right now we bring our attention to our hands, the attention might flit out to sounds or thoughts, other body sensations. But if you're getting carried away a lot, just without the ability to be mindful, just come back a little more. Land, or the whole body is a great ground. Sometimes the front of our chest. And often in that, just that kind of patience, with that patience, you can land within your body. And then again, if you are getting pulled out a lot, you just put your hands on your belly, experiencing the changing sensations in your hand. And just let the movement of the breath come into your hands. And you can start to feel maybe a deeper calm, ease, connection. Receiving each amazing swell, just like a wave. Coming and going at the ocean. And out of this connection with the calm and more stillness, ease. For some of you, you might be just able to let go or jump into that flow of moment to moment sixth sense door awareness with ease. You might be pulled into just knowing, as it was instructed yesterday. Knowing that flow of moment to moment change. Others, it might be more like an orchestra of a few thoughts, maybe a few body sensations, a few sounds. And at some point, we'll get lost in thinking. For some people, they'll just kind of jump back into that flow of sixth sense door awareness. And others, it might be helpful to anchor for a while again with the breath, hands, breath, or sounds. And just be careful of believing that there's one better way to practice. It's all skillful means. The soft readiness might be that we need to do some karuna, compassion, or metta. enjoying this gift of pure exploration. Knowing whatever arises is worthy of our attention, including aversion, attachment, doubt, boredom, happiness, peace, joy, loneliness, sadness, fear. Anything that appears is worthy of our attention. if you remember the beginning of the retreat, in the opening talk, I mentioned that our teachers from Burma would always begin retreats sharing how important the teaching on generosity is, like that, and just that reminder that the Buddha described generosity as the foundation of the house, and our house meaning our body, mind, heart, but of the everything. It's like the basement. That's what holds us. And I was happy to hear Steve talk about the lineage of our teachers back to the time of the Buddha. It's very meaningful to hear always. So we've been learning a lot about doing online retreats, but we haven't remembered to add in the Adana talk. And we would be very remiss to not do that anymore. It's just like taken a while to get a steady schedule in every retreat. Because that's steady, I hope you appreciate that that's been a predictable, steady schedule. Very hard to make changes, even this little bit of a change, the tweak. We're trying very hard to keep it useful in that way for all of us. It's there's so many layers and aspects to generosity that we have a wonderful student that's offered to talk a little bit about Dana. But I just wanted to mention something before I ask Gita to share. And we're so grateful. The three of us, Steve, Jesse, and I, are so grateful. Gita has offered. The pandemic has been so hard on so many people, and in this community here, a small community where our land is, there's been a really like an important small restaurant for the community, and it had to close a few months ago, and it was very intense to watch. We didn't know if it was closing temporarily or closing permanently, but one day we saw all the kitchen equipment being taken out to be sold. And it's moving, right? All the ways the pandemic has affected communities. And we bumped into this owner of this restaurant recently, who's a friend, and we asked, we were genuinely concerned, like, how are you doing? Are you, what's going on? And he said, I struggled for a while, but then I decided to open and run a food bank. And he teared up a lot. There's a lot of people everywhere that are very hungry, right? And not having enough money to buy food. And out here, it's been very intense. And he kept tearing up, and he just said, it's such a surprise. He said, I wish someone had told me earlier in my life how good it would feel to be generous. And he cried, and he just said, I can't tell you, like, people are thinking I'm being so wonderful, and how the community's all coming forward to help. And he said, but this is so important for me. It's like the best thing I've ever done. And it just it's just a small example of our responsibility also to share that that here we name the lineage of the teachers all the way back to the time of the Buddha, and how that the generosity of all the students is what has made that possible, right? To last through time. And so I think it's just to remember that this is the foundation in our world, in our communities, in our countries, in the world. So thank you, Gita, for being willing to share. I know it's vulnerable. Thank you.
It is. It's a little intimidating to talk after so long, but my deep, deep bows to the three teachers, but mostly to the Sangha, to all of you who have sat and held the space. I really didn't think it was possible to feel so connected to everyone in this world. It just has been so incredible. So I truly bow to you for creating this mosaic, this quilt that has held each other in practice. And I think the Buddha would really be smiling at us, that we have just used, technology now. He talked about the shepherds and the cows of the time, and now we're talking about Zoom because this is the new path of Dharma. So it's many years ago when I started sitting the retreats, the Dharma talk was that sort of the fundraiser talk that always felt like, and I would just feel my heart contract. I would just feel like, oh, I need a shower kind of thing. And it felt so strange to me that generosity talk would actually create a contraction in the heart. And I realized it was offered in the Western context where there is a very difficult relationship many of us have with money. And somehow there's this transaction of money that almost felt like it took the sacred away from this very amazing container of the retreat. And over the years, I've really, really found that I have needed to turn towards that place of resistance to understand where am I getting contracted and what this is about. And I realized it wasn't understanding the cultural, extraordinary sacred cultural crucible in which this practice has been born. And so I have really turned back to my own mother and to my own roots of India to understand the incredible power of generosity and the showers of karma that can actually bathe us if we open our hearts instead of contract in this time. So I want to offer a story. Earlier this year, I went to India in March for what I thought was going to be 10 days to help my father with a medical condition. And on day 9 that I was there, India closed its borders into an absolute firm lockdown where no flights were allowed in or out of India. And commercial flights even now are not allowed. But 5 months later, I was able to come back on an evacuation flight. But what happened during that time in India just really just, it just was so incredible. So they locked down everything, meaning for the first 5 weeks, only medical stores and dry goods stores were open and allowed for a few hours, but no vegetables. They closed down all the vegetable markets because China had supposedly had this outbreak at a wet market. And so they were so afraid of these outdoor vegetable markets, which now, of course, are the safest things around. But what happened was the farmers had crops that were just rotting in the fields. And the police were enforcing this lockdown with significant brutality. So we were literally beaten if we stepped outside the gate. Some farmers, because their children were starving, they had vegetables, but they had no oil, they had no rice, they had no wheat to make anything with the vegetables. So they had to have the courage to make these makeshift carts, which just, there are 4 bicycle wheels and a plank on top. And they just pile these vegetables, and they go through every street, every small street, vending these vegetables, right? So this farmer came through, tomatoes, potatoes, cilantro, greens. So I looked out, and there was a little, the kind of scarf that Michelle's wearing, like a little hammock made out of that kind of scarf, just underneath the plank, which held this little baby, probably like a year old. And they were so desperate to sell me vegetables because they needed just enough to make it. So I bought the vegetables worth probably $1 when I translate the money. And I gave them $10 worth of rupees. And he just teared up. He said, "I can't take this. I only gave you $1 worth of vegetables. I can't take the rest because I will karmically be in your debt otherwise." So I said, "Well, it's okay. You can still take it, use what you need, and then pay it forward the rest." 3 days later, he came to me and said, "I found I had more than enough. And so I started to just sell enough vegetables for because I told him I have more than enough. So you take it," right? That's what I told him. And so he went on and he started to give these vegetables out to all these poor slums and places where they could not afford the vegetables, right? And soon it was so beautiful to watch these twinkling eyes behind these tears of what it means to have enough when it's so obvious there isn't enough, and to pay it forward. And then, the thought emerged. I was like, well, here's another, $50 worth of rupees. Can you just make sure that anyone who comes to buy who can't afford it just has enough to buy, right? So it was so simple. I couldn't leave my gate, but it transformed everything. And this generosity is what the Buddha really talked about, that we are constantly interconnected and we can do so much by just opening our hearts. And as you do this, then generosity becomes the door for all the Brahma Vihars to be possible. So the Buddha said there were 2 kinds of rare and precious beings in this world. One, those who give freely, volunteer freely and give freely of whatever they have. And the second are those who are grateful for that kindness. And so today we're invited to be part of this really rare and precious club. And I would like all of you to really think about that we are such privileged people to be able to live with so much and to give to our teachers who have offered so much in this lineage. So, one thing I feel very strongly about is our 3 teachers offer this in the purest way that it has been offered. They don't have a 401k. They don't have any kind of social security money coming out of this probably. And they don't have, you know, institution like perhaps, you know, some of the larger meditation organizations have. These three teachers are just offering this. And when you look at places like the apps, which are like billion-dollar industries, that's not them either. So it is our responsibility to become their 401k. And when Michele and Steve talk about the word responsibility, yesterday Steve talked about this, they carry a responsibility to offer this lineage pure and deep. I feel like it is this understanding of the word responsibility, right? So response plus ability. Can we have an appropriate, generous, kind response to the best of our ability towards opening the heart? And as I have tried to do this, many times my friends have asked me who come to retreat for the first time, how much is okay? How much should I give? And it's definitely a question that I struggle with, like how much, you know, and how many zeros is okay? And what I would like to say is it's not a tip. It's not a 10% or 20% for services that is offered. And it's certainly not, you know, don't, you know, when you come out of retreat tomorrow, you'll have an email box full of like 50% off special, holiday special for like the class, you know, only $5.99. It's not that either. What I would ask you to do is to really spend a few minutes of meditation using the 4 foundations of mindfulness and the Brahma Vihars, really looking at that place where your heart expands and where it contracts. And you will actually see this. I have felt this. There have been times when I've wondered if this number is enough or not. And I will just close my eyes, put my hand on my heart, and there'll be a little contraction, like I'm bargaining with that number. And it's really interesting. So then I just add a little more and see, is there enough of an expansion in the heart? Is there enough? So where that heart feels like it can give enough without hurting, that's where I invite you to land. And please know it's COVID time, and please know that some of us don't have enough. And it's okay to offer just our deepest metta and our deepest wish for well-being for our teachers, and that is enough. And then please know for the rest of us who have enough, that perhaps we could stretch just a little more than what we intended to balance out this time of COVID. So may that karma of generosity hold you and generations after you in light and in love and in full liberation. Thank you. And thank you to the teachers so deeply.
Thank you, Gita. That was beautiful. Really beautiful. We'll post how
Thank you.
on the website, or you'll get an email or what have you. But just thank you, Gita, so much. That was really so beautiful.
So as we say, it's time for walking or whatever is in your schedule, and we'll see you in 1 hour, a little less than an hour, for the question and answer time. Short set question and answers. Thank you. Thank you, Gita.